Welcome to the KFP podcast. You are now listening to the IT specialists for Europe's retail and hospitality industry, providing listeners with the latest technology, service and IT industry updates. KFP is the company that provides value to the biggest and best retail and hospitality brands across the world. You are now live with the KFP team.
KFP podcast. Great to have Steve Chambers with us today. Steve, Head of Sales and Marketing. Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about cloud-managed Wi-Fi. And we're going to understand, why retailers need Wi-Fi solutions in store. And Steve, it'll be good for you to sort of introduce yourself. So welcome, Steve.
Aaron, hi. Thanks for having me. Great to be on the podcast today. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. No, thank you, Steve. I think cloud-managed Wi-Fi, Steve, is very important today. I mean, even in a current COVID world and post-COVID world, I think, Wi-Fi solutions in store, very, very important for the modern retailer and technology. But if we just start off just to understand, Steve, what is cloud-managed Wi-Fi solutions? How do we define that?
Well, I suppose from our client's perspective, it's all about sort of simplicity and manageability, I suppose, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Back in the day, people used to put sort of controller-based WAPs into locations, into head offices, that sort of thing, which was great. I suppose if you got one office and loads of WAPs, you put a controller and everything works, is fine. But in retail particularly, some of these guys have got hundreds of stores across Europe. You can't really put a controller in each store. It becomes expensive. It becomes really difficult to manage, to maintain. So these days, the vendors like Meraki, for example, that we primarily work with, are putting in cloud-managed portals. So customers can literally roll out WAPs to multiple locations, and they can see these WAPs online via a single pane of glass. So if a retailer's got 150 stores across Europe and they've got 10 WAPs in every store, for argument's sake, they can see all these WAPs online from one place. They can see if they're powered on, whether they're connected, whether they're working, what their power usage is like, what sort of coverage they're providing, all that kind of good stuff. So that's really what it's all about. It's all about just making sure this sort of stuff's simple and manageable. And obviously, from our perspective, we're delivering a service that wraps around this sort of stuff. And the great thing is that we can deploy it, and it's simple. We can just deploy it from the portal, and then everything works.
So in terms of kind of retail estate sizes then, Steve, I mean, in terms of the solution, would it be suitable for kind of 40 to 50 store wide estates up to hundreds of, even, some locations or even thousands of locations? I mean, can the solution fit both models? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the key thing from a portal-based solution is that it doesn't matter where the locations are. You could have one in, if you're talking just the UK, let's keep it simple, you could have one in Glasgow, one in London. If you've got physical controller-based solutions in those locations, you need someone potentially to be able to go between each location to get things fixed, to get things working, to get things upgraded, all that kind of stuff. But once the kit's in and working and online via the portal, as I said earlier, everything's driven by that one online place. So your IT administrators can just be managing their estate of wireless access points via this single pane of glass, and it just makes things in today's world. Everything's all about Internet of Things now, isn't it? Everyone wants to have their devices connected online, or managed in one place. People even are starting to manage things in their homes with smartphones, for example. You can be driving home and turn the heating on with your phone if it's getting a bit cold, and that sort of stuff. And that's what people are really looking for these days, that ability to just switch things off and switch things on when they need to, without having to worry about having to be in the right place at the right time to do it. It's all about just using the internet, I think, at the end of the day, to make these things as seamless as possible, I guess.
Well, that's the interesting thing, is because so I was reading a study conducted actually by the Institute of Technology a few weeks back, and it actually suggested that even above 48% of consumers now are using their mobile phones even before entering a store. and that's relative to browsing the the store's stock. So looking at if you take apparel for example, majority of consumers already know what they're going to buy even before entering the store. So over just up to over 48% are actually using mobiles before they enter the store. So how does wireless solutions cater for things like loyalty offerings in store?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's kind of all baked into the offering. I mean, but obviously we're the infrastructure partner. We're the guys that work with our customers, and we can install the underlying networking, structured cabling. We can position the WAPs, do the heat maps, the coverage, all that kind of stuff. We can figure that stuff out and get it up and running. But behind that layer of infrastructure that we specialize in, there's all sorts of applications and software tools and skills that are available to retailers where they can start analyzing what's going on in their stores. So loyalty is one really key part. If you've got a customer inside your store and they've got your loyalty app installed, for example, you can use the wireless technology in store to be able to incentivize that shopper to buy. Ultimately, if they're within a store that's got Bluetooth beaconing, for example, set up via the wireless network, they can be in the store browsing denim, let's say. And you can use that intelligence to be able to send that shopper a discount code to say, buy those jeans today and we'll give you 20% off, for example. So it's all about conversion, and it's all about making sure that when someone comes into the store, if they're a loyalty customer, you have the ability as a retailer to use the technology to get that shopper to actually purchase there and then. Otherwise, you run the risk of them potentially leaving the store without purchasing anything. And they might shop online. They might, and as a retailer, you might still get that business. But once they've walked out the door, they could walk into a store next door, and get the same service from them potentially if you're not delivering it yourself. So it's, from a loyalty perspective, it's all about conversion, I think, and making sure that you're using the technology to the best of your ability, so that when your customers are in your stores and in your locations, you're doing everything you can to make sure that they're essentially going to purchase your product rather than your competitors, I suppose. And that's where tech's really important. I think customers now, they've got the power, they've got the choice of where they shop now. And if retailers are going to make that decision so much easier for the shopper when they're in store, and incentivize them to buy with maybe a discount code or some loyalty points or whatever it might be, and they're seeing that seamless experience when they walk in the door, they're going to buy. They're not going to think, oh, I might save myself a couple of quid if I buy online, or if I'll walk 100 yards down the street and find another store and see if they can do it a bit cheaper. They're going to buy if they feel that they're being treated as an important customer, and if their experience in that store is conducive to that, then I think that's what they're going to do. And we're here as the infrastructure guys to help our customers deploy that sort of technology so they can take advantage of some of those application layers that are available, to give them that analytics.
So Steve, we're actually starting to see a growth in things like you touched on just there, Bluetooth beacon technology, things like heat mapping, smart traffic counting analytics. Retailers today, we know that they really want to provide a more personal service. So what kind of trends are we seeing from your type of customers then? Even retail and hospitality. Is this technology becoming more popular?
Definitely. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we've been seriously working with wireless now for probably, let's say, it's got to be 5 years that we've been seriously investing in that technology. So before then, it was kind of quite niche, and all people were really talking about back then was a client, a shopper might want Wi-Fi in the store when they walk in. We're all used to that, aren't we? You walk into a pub, a restaurant, or anywhere these days, and you expect to have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly. I know I do, and all my friends and everyone. Yeah,
exactly that. And retail's the same. So that's kind of how it first started, but very quickly and naturally, the retailers are looking at how they can maybe utilize that technology to give as I was saying earlier, a better experience for the customer. When we first started looking at this sort of stuff, being brutally honest with you, we were back then, because we weren't really seeing I don't think we were seeing enough of a demand within our client base at that time to have the specialist tools, the software tools, the heat mapping, the coverage tools, the surveying tools, all that kind of clever stuff that goes on
Yeah.
before the WAP's even installed. There's a lot of work that goes on, to get the network where it needs to be. So we were using partners that had that skill set, and we were just essentially, working with those guys to deliver the service for our customers. As it's become more and more popular, we now do that ourselves. So around about sort of 3 or 4 years ago, we purchased the software, we purchased the tools, we trained our staff, we got those guys accredited so that we can now take customers on this journey from start to finish to deploy wireless, to deliver all the things we've been talking about. And we can now do that in-house. And since we've taken that stuff on board and delivered it ourselves and talked to our customers about it, it becomes very apparent that it's been a massive growth area for us. And I think it's still continuing, because the beauty is now is there's more and more applications for this sort of stuff. We've talked about Bluetooth beaconing, we've talked about loyalty, we've talked about client Wi-Fi, and we've talked about now click and collect. There's really interesting things now, particularly, I know we don't really like talking about COVID as a business because we don't want to jump on that bandwagon, so to speak.
Exactly.
But these days, people are now talking about mobile POS, queue busting, social distancing at the sales level. So when customers are in store, they haven't got to go and queue at a till. They can now transact on the shop floor, and that means the wireless network has to take on a completely different domain, because it's now just not about coverage; it's about speed and accessibility and reliability.
So is there more demand now and more requirement because more people are actually using these applications, things like mobile POS? Surely the demand for a speedy Wi-Fi solution is more in demand now.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
In COVID world.
And what people need to realise as well is in these really busy shopping centres, or in sort of high density areas like the high street, for example, or retail parks, you've got tons and tons of wireless networks all competing with each other. Every retailer's putting their own network in, so there's so much disturbance within each retail unit. So you've got to do some really clever stuff with your network to make sure that your network can break through all of that noise, if you like, all of that wireless noise going on, to deliver the targeted solution they're trying to deliver to their customer as they walk in the door. So these days, the whole scoping out of a wireless network and the deployment of it is really key now, because it's all well and good. I mean, if a customer walks in the store and just wants a little bit of free Wi-Fi, that's one thing. That's a very entry level requirement, really. But if you move it all the way through the journey to the point where you're transacting on the shop floor with a customer, if you just, for argument's sake, your Bluetooth beaconing system has sent a loyalty based customer a 20% off these jeans today if you buy now. The customer wants to buy them. You could walk up to them with a mobile POS and transact there and then.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that trend grow massively over retail in particular, but it's also been quite popular in hospitality for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, exactly that. I mean,
smart menus, I think they're called.
Yeah, there's all sorts you can do now. And again, in the COVID world we're in right now, if you go into a hospitality venue now and you order some food and drink, typically that's being done on a smartphone, on an app. It's table service. Using QR code technology to log on to the retailers or the restaurant's platform to place your order, all that kind of stuff. And all of that's based on the Wi-Fi technology that's available. So Wi-Fi now is really delivering above and beyond what it was ever really designed to do. I think 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, the whole piece has moved forward so much in that period that the intelligence that you can deploy in these retail spaces now with a properly configured and designed Wi-Fi solution, the possibilities in store now are really, really quite exciting.
Yeah, I think the future is definitely looking exciting for retail. I think, all you have to do is look at the news and you kind of see the doom and gloom of retail, but I don't think that's always the case. I think things are always developing technology-wise. I think people are talking about all smart technology, AR, AI, and even robots to some extent. So it's all quite exciting. But thank you for that. Really appreciate you elaborating on that. So Steve, I mean, finally, in terms of sort of KFP as a business, providing IT specialization to both retail, hospitality, and even in convenience. I mean, what would someone need to consider for Wi-Fi services, and what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, I think the key message around Wi-Fi now is it's all about the planning. It's all in the planning and the configuration now. It's not just a case of back in the day you could afford to go into a store of a certain size, put a WAP in the ceiling, job done. It was kind of relatively straightforward. These days now, as I said earlier, it's all about coverage, performance. It's all about how the signal is being impacted in the store in relation to sometimes the structure of the building itself can have an impact, but how many other wireless networks are around, and because of that, the whole scoping out and the design of the network is vital to make it work. And we've now got the tools where we can engage with the customer, understand what they're trying to achieve in store, understand what their end goal is. We can then survey the store based upon those requirements, and we can plumb in a number of parameters into the software that we use to give us the output that we need from a coverage perspective. That will pinpoint where each WAP needs to go. We can then survey whether we need to get some structured cabling into those positions to support the WAPs and get them online. And then we can deploy the technology, and get the network up and running for the customer. We can get the portal set up with the vendor so they can see all the WAPs online from their head office, and they can manage all of that remotely. So it really is an end-to-end journey where along every step of the way, we deliver the value from an infrastructure perspective. So the customer gets to a position where they've got a reliable, robust wireless network that performs in store, that can deliver not only the bedrock, which is a wireless network, but it can deliver mobile POS, it can deliver Bluetooth beacon, and it can deliver potentially traffic counting, footfall analytics, all that kind of good stuff, so that we do really then start to create an intelligent space inside the retailer store, and then they can use that infrastructure to really target their customers, drive loyalty, drive experience, and ultimately increase revenues. That's what it's all about. That's why these guys are doing it. We're not putting in the Wi-Fi networks just to make sure a shopper's got a bit of free Wi-Fi. It's all about making sure the retailers can deliver value, and in turn we're making sure that we give them the infrastructure to deliver that ultimately. But in terms of getting in touch with us, I mean, KFPIT.com is a great starting point. There's a piece on our website regards our Wi-Fi journey and how we go about deploying it from start to finish. For existing customers, if you've got an account manager, our existing customers can get in touch with their account manager and talk about it that way, or just come to us via sales@kfpit.com, and we can discuss all sorts of requirements for customers and get things off the ground from there, really.
Brilliant. Okay, Steve, look, thank you very much for that. That was really interesting, and I think in terms of wireless offerings and the future of IoT within retail is going to obviously grow. And I think the requirement and demand is going to be grow tenfold by the end of the year. We can see that even in a COVID world that all this technology is still in mass requirement. So, but look, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
As this is series 1, we'll look forward to more series. But thank you, Steve, and let's speak soon. Take care.
Thanks, Aaron. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the KFP podcast. Visit our website for more information at www.kfpit.com.